Welcome to Diversity Conversations, where we engage in thought-provoking dialogue to identify leadership solutions to today's most challenging conflicts. Stream live each week, Saturday 9:30 a.m. to 11 a.m. Hosted by Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Strategist and CEOs Eric Ellis and Tommy Lewis. Join us and add your voice to this engaging diversity conversation.
Good morning, greater Cincinnati, Northern Kentucky, the United States, and the world. My name is Eric Ellis. I'm the president and CEO of Integrity Development Corporation, and I'm joined this morning by my good friend and brother,
Tommy Lewis, president and CEO of Make It Plain Consulting. It's good to be with you. It's good to be with my brother, Eric Ellis, and it's good to be in this space of diversity conversations.
Ooh,
good morning, Eric.
It absolutely, Tommy. It's heating up. The space is heating up. And only the truly committed need show up now, because right now is the time, if you are getting ready and you want to be an ally, you want to do the right thing. Now is your moment, your shining moment to stand up with this and not really. There's an article that says that now is not the time to approach this work through a lay low strategy. And so Tommy and I are going to talk a little bit about, I had the honor of being a part of CityLink Center's inclusion sort of community dialogue this last week. I had a wonderfully distinguished panel that came together with our community to talk about inclusion and looking at what's working and, how are people dealing with the current state, and then how do you apply this personally. Tommy and I are going to continue that dialogue. But we'll start with, Tommy, how was your week, man?
Yeah, my week was pretty good, Eric. We had a number of significant losses. Some we had, kind of birds in the hand. They flew away. Some we were very confident, maybe overconfident, but we were very confident and we did not achieve those. However, Eric, in these quote unquote losses, I shared with my team, and they saw it in me, my voice and my energy, that God continues to talk to me and the team.
I love that.
There is something happening whereby over the last 2 months, we've been kind of in dire straits,
right?
On a number of different areas.
That's right.
Business has not been flowing. It's been the end of the fourth quarter. Now we're moving into quarter one of this year. It's a number of things.
Right.
But in that storm, I'm always strategizing, etc. There was peace and calm. And that's what happened to me this week. I was told in my prayer and my meditation that I, Eric, should turn it all over to him. I have been trying to think through all the answers.
Okay.
And so that's where I am and how my week is.
I love that.
Turn it all over.
So now let me put this in perspective, just so that you don't think that my brilliant brother here, that there's anything defective about him. Let me make it clear. All of us are dealing with the same sort of environment and sort of terrain. That is the picture of the DEI terrain right now. I'll say it another way. You've seen movies where people were on the beaches and vibrant, and then all of a sudden, all the buildings were empty, and people had just left all their stuff on the beaches, and then it just stuff had been run over by the ocean. And all you saw was tents where people used to have a good time, and all the buildings are now abandoned. In many ways, that's a part of what the DEI industry is beginning to look like. I said this last week, Tommy, that it has taken us over 65 years to get to this point, active years, since the 60s, to move DEI to something that had the business case and all of that. And literally it feels like it's only taken weeks or months to dismantle the whole thing. And so we have to begin to look at, why is that? And we are seeing still some companies that are very, very committed to this work. Both of us have clients, and we'll talk about that. But I'll tell you that there is nothing in this world that can take a daily pummeling without any real strategy to counter the attacks that can sustain itself. We've done, for years, for decades, people have been saying, how do we get the C-suite engaged in this work? And if you don't get the leadership bought in, how do you get them enrolled? And they say, well, everybody's committed. Well, no, our leaders are committed. We just can't get middle management. No. We're seeing what happens when the dominant culture gets focused on achieving something. And right now, too many people have been focused on, with power, have been focused on dismantling DEI. And who would have ever thought that the systems that were being put in place to try to bring about a level playing field, that those would be the same tools that people would come around and try to sort of utilize those to dismantle equity, fairness, diversity. And so we've got a real battle going on. And so it's going to be harder for Tommy and I to be whisperers anymore.
Right.
We're not just going to be able to sort of dog whistle things about the lack of support. In some ways, we've got to sort of pull a call to action to you, because this is not about us. What we know is that we're right now in a world on fire. And people are literally dismantling those tools that can help us to put out the fire.
Yeah.
I was just thinking about, Tommy, how fair you and I approach this work. That we really, and many of the people that we know, let's just be frank, you cannot survive in this business if you're not approaching this from an inclusive standpoint.
Absolutely.
So for the last 30 years, I have been looking at how bias even impacts white males.
Yeah.
And I've been fighting for every manufacturer that I work with. I go in there recognizing that oftentimes the people on the ground floor aren't listened to, aren't respected, aren't valued. And so I believe that DEI, DEIB, DEIA has to fight for anybody that's marginalized or left out or misunderstood or even harmed. We've even looked at the impact that stress and an out of balance life has on the C-suite.
Yeah.
So we are fighting for everyone. So DEI is not just a goodie bag, a birthday party for Black folks. Although everybody's been concerned about that one.
Right.
You couldn't survive in this business if that's how you were approaching this. So how is it that something that has evolved to be so inclusive can be demonized and almost dismantled and brought to the point of shame right out of the gates?
Eric, so as you were explaining that, I'm thinking of words. So you shared diversity, equity, inclusion, accessibility, et cetera, et cetera. And I remember growing up as a kid, and I was taught lessons such as you are what you eat. Right?
Yes, sir.
The food that you take in,
Right.
you become that.
Whoa.
And then I got older and started to study the word and learn that we are what we eat. And the number one thing that human beings eat are words.
That's right, Tommy.
It's what identifies us. It's how we see and define and make sense of differences, commonalities, and anything that we touch, smell, taste, etc.
Right.
It is our lens, the words. So when someone like our parents say, you're going to be great, you're going to be great, you're going to be great, the word great is amplified, that it becomes part of your identity.
Yeah.
Now we're in a space, time, and continuum that the words diversity, uniqueness, difference,
right,
equity, that
bring your authentic self to work,
authentic self, inclusion, coming together, working together, right? Understanding the differences.
Right.
That's what those words mean, but they're being manipulated.
Right. Misconstrued.
Yep.
Disinformation.
Now, for some, diversity against us.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Leaving us out.
Yeah.
Equity. Right. We are losing.
Right.
So equity, when we have to give you something,
right,
or level the playing field, we're losing.
Right.
Inclusion, exclusion. we're literally saying that inclusion doesn't mean inclusion. It really means exclusion.
Right.
And exclusion means exclusion. What? And so what we're fighting over now in a number of ways, still falls in this war against principalities, words, right? Systems, processes, but the principles,
right?
And you said it so well that we're still working for humanity,
right?
At the end of the day,
right?
And so I'm excited
I do,
about this conversation. I know folks are joining us, and welcome. But please chime in with your comments, your thoughts, because we're going to have a diversity conversation this morning.
Right. And so what I would say to you is that we've got to be able to look at what's really happening around us to dissect. I like what Tommy said earlier, and I want to come back to that because it's the same lesson that God has given to me. I'm going to say this very boldly, and I'm not against any party. I really think that we need 2 or 3 or 4 vibrant parties. So I want the Republican Party to survive and to be stronger and more representative of the people. But I think that we also have to call out things that are happening around us that are really not helpful to us. And so we're going to look at some of those things, because I think that right now, when we look at the choices that we have, we're in trouble as a nation. But Tommy said that God is his refuge. He's recognized that his strength and his power and his survival and success comes from God. And the reason why I mentioned parties is because I believe that many of our Christian Republican family members got like in the Bible where the children were saying, God, we need a king. Give us a king, God. We want a king. And so God left them for a minute. Then, okay, if that's what y'all want, that's what you get. And I would say that many people of faith have lost faith in the Almighty. And as a result of losing faith in the Almighty, they then were looking for a man that might fight for me the way that I want to fight. Well, the fight in you that you're talking about is against what the principles of God are all about. God said that when your enemy, in the face of your enemy, you love those who despise you. Where is that in our language? That when I think about, I mean, Tommy, I almost cried the other day when I thought about these immigrants and people are putting up a sort of wire fence, razor wire, and just thinking about the little kids that are in the water, that some of them are going to be cut up because we're trying to hold them out in the name of what? I am not suggesting that there is not a need to balance what happens on our borders. But we cannot allow our value system to be lost in this whole process. And so what I'm saying about my Christian Republican sisters and brothers and their desire to have a man that would fight for them, I understand what they're afraid of. They're afraid of that liberalism and the wave of liberalism taking away their own freedom to have their own beliefs. And there's some other things that are under that, but I understand that you're not simply trying to be against people consciously, but you really are looking for a man to rescue you and your value system when you ought to be turning back to God. So our confidence this morning is that what happens in the future of our industry has very little to do with us. Has everything to do. God has fired me sometimes from my desk and said, Eric, okay, son. He used to rub me on my shoulder, say, yeah, that's a good effort. Why don't you go down to your studio, make a song, go down there singing. I don't really need you up here. And I can promise you that where God is taking me in the midst of this is to a whole new place. And he's preparing Tommy and I and our entire industry to be vessels and tools that are used by the mighty hand of God to help heal a community, a nation, a world that is bent on destroying itself.
Yeah. I want to invite everyone, including us, Eric, to transition from being passive, right, and being a bystander.
Right. That's right.
So now it's time to speak up.
That's right.
And speaking up is in different forms.
Right.
You can verbally speak up. You have that courage and you can deal with the consequences of speaking up. Sure. And then there's also, from an integrity perspective, speaking up from your modeling behavior.
That's right, Tommy.
Whoa. You can speak up there. So now we have to do what we plan to do.
That's right.
If there's conversations that are offensive, that are demeaning, that are discriminatory, etc.,
right,
you don't always have to verbally speak up. You can walk away, you can dismount,
right,
or you can show some behavior that's not the values that we expect in this organization, in this family, in this world.
Right.
And so we have at times lost our value system. We may have reframed it.
That's right. Right.
The value is no longer love. The value is no longer community.
Right. Get them back.
The value is no longer unity.
Right.
It's actually, the value is win at all costs.
Yeah.
Winner and loser.
Right. Build a diabolical strategy to win.
Diabolical. Right. And Eric, and if I am unable to complete or execute the plan, then the next person or next generation will continue it. Right. So it's diabolical.
No doubt. And that's the right word.
Yes, that's right.
That's the right word. And so I'm going to come at it again, because I told Tommy that I had a cold sweat. I woke up and said, I got to go to Columbus and stand on the State House and say, vote for Nikki Haley. I mean, I'm not a huge fan of Nikki Haley, but I am not. Because the whole country, we can't wait for Trump to get to Biden. Let's get him now. And I'm willing to vote for Nikki Haley in the final if it's going to make our country better. And I would say to you that don't listen to us. Listen to everyone that's ever worked in Donald Trump's administration. Almost everyone. If you hear what John Bolton, Secretary Bolton, is saying right now. Now, I saw him as a man that was not very friendly to diversity when he was serving in Trump's administration. Now he's saying that former President Donald Trump is an existential threat to our country. And here's an example of what he gave. He said that Trump never had the patience to even sit and learn. He believes that his own force of his own personality is big enough to influence and persuade anybody in the world. So he doesn't have knowledge of history, nor does he believe he needs it. He said, so he's literally been laughed at by Putin, by Kim Jong-un, and all they do is pat him on the back and say nice things about your cheeks. Not that orange. I love you. Send him a bouquet of roses. And what John Bolton said, this is not what Eric said. This is what the man that worked right next to him said. He said, if he's ever in a situation like a 9/11, where he's got to make a decision between something that's in the best interest of the country and something that's in his own best interest, he will choose himself. We can no longer be quiet about that reality. Chris Christie is saying the same thing. Come on, you all. You cannot allow yourself to be deceived by social identity and your desire to be caught up in tribalism against someone else. I'll give you one more set of research just to wrap this around research. Dr. Liliana Mason has done extensive research around social identity and its impact on our politics. She did a major study on Democrats and Republicans. She looked at their sort of how they line up in terms of their policy beliefs. And so the most liberal person would be a 0, the most conservative would be a 1, and the Republicans were a 0.39 as a group, and Democrats were a 0.22. So a 0.5 is middle between liberal and conservative. Then they're both left of center in terms of their allegiance to policies like women's reproductive health, like immigration, like guns, all of those things that we are surprisingly more aligned as a nation than we act like we are in our politics. And then she also looked at consistency around a 0 being sort of not consistent at all and a 1 being very consistent in terms of your choices. Republicans, again, were a 0.39 and Democrats were 0.44. So if we don't really have any real policy differences, then what in the world are we fighting for? And I'll give you a final example for those of you that are older than 20. I don't even think the Republican Party has a platform now. If we don't have a platform, why don't we have a platform? We don't need one. It's not about that. It's simply about winning.
That's it. At all cost. Even if it's going to hurt me, and unfortunately, if it's going to hurt the country.
Yeah.
Right. It can hurt the world.
Right.
So what we're experiencing here in the U.S. is transforming the world. We're experiencing things in other countries, and those things happen here. So what I mean by that is that anything that we do, be it the United States or any other country, Eric, it's actually not the land, it's the people.
Right.
That's important.
It's the people.
I say that's important because I heard a comment in an interview with Nikki Haley, and she had made a comment that this country had never been racist.
Grasping for straws, man, and trying to get that Trump base.
And so the interviewer said, clarify this. And she says, well, this country was not founded to be racist. And so as I'm listening to that, Eric, I would say two things. One, she's correct that the country as a land was never racist. The earth
Right.
was never racist.
Right. Right.
But the people that cohabitated on this land were of different ilks, different religions, creeds, races, etc. And so in this country, I'm speaking of the United States of America, indigenous people were already here before the fathers, right? And then there was policies and procedures and actual events that happened. Right. And I'm not just talking about slavery. I'm not just talking about the Trail of Tears. I'm talking about yesterday when books are being banned, right? Yesterday, when we're being prevented from purchasing homes in certain communities, right? Not yesteryear, yesterday.
Right.
And so some of these policies, practices, beliefs, protocols are deeply embedded in strong racial and ethnic bias.
Right.
And so to say that this country has never been racist is really kind of trying to erase the entire past to re-narratize. I'm making up a word.
Right.
To create a new story or narrative that is only told by one group of people.
Right.
Right. And I'm not, please, community, I ask that you don't receive what I'm sharing as a stab or a jab at any one person or even a group of people.
Right.
Because through our conversations, we're humanitarians.
Right.
And then ultimately our lives are just rented.
Right.
All of them.
Right.
We're only here for a short period of time.
That's right.
And so I do say these things, as you do, Eric, as well, that even in our own families, personal families, we have to sometimes speak up to say, hey,
what are y'all doing?
This ain't right.
Right. Y'all saying crazy things that are off the chart.
So you mean to tell me that you said that your grandmother and grandfather never existed? Right. Yeah, I'm saying there was no grandma, grandpa. What? I
can't sit back here and just go along with that.
Can't sit back here and go along with it.
Right.
And so that's what we are doing.
Right.
Not sitting back and going along with it.
That's right.
We have to have critical, crucial, and diversity conversations and dialogues.
And if you leave people out, so let's just look at if there's a such thing as structural bias. So these conservative think tanks have come together all to reject the notion of systemic racial bias. But then, or gender bias. But then on the other hand, they want to say that there is structural liberalism at universities. So how is it that everybody colorblind, gender blind, But no, we're making distinctions based upon ideological beliefs. Everybody tries to take their own angle. All people, what Tommy and I believe is that all people have bias, but all people don't have the same amount of power. And so their biases are not necessarily able to negatively impact an entire other group of people. And the thing is, but here's the thing I love about these foolish attacks. They are actually not sustainable. It's a sugar high. It's crack, basically. I mean, we're just feeding people crack because it's not sustainable. And whenever you take overreaches, you look up and you might start getting what you want. And when you do, that's when you'll lose elections. Because right now, I think the people that are going to step forward in this 2024 election are going to be the women of this country. Thank God for the women. The women are going to rescue us from ourselves. And I'll tell you, because we've been talking about Republicans, this is a Democratic phenomenon as well. That bias, that sort of rigged, wanting your people to be stupid and not to see anything good in the other side. Everybody does that. Everybody's there. So there's no beauty in parties. It's just that one party started building its identity around everything that was counter those marginalized groups. Yeah. It's like, let's leave all of those. And many people would say to you that the Southern Democrats, the Dixiecrats, started leaving the Democratic Party after the civil rights legislation got passed. Then many of them became Republicans. And so that's sort of the quiet fight that we are engaged in right now. But men sat around in the Supreme Court and all these state houses and Congress, these same men that want wives that are just at home and not working and just having children. Yeah, those are the same men that are now voting on women's health care. Now let's just take a look at the fact that the Supreme Court said we can't really make decisions around more gun laws because there's too many different types. It's too complex. So we can't make decisions on guns because they're too complex. And now we're going to make decisions on women's reproductive health care and say that that's not
right.
And so that's a losing battle. Whenever you start demonizing and criminalizing your people and their healthcare providers, it is really sad, Tommy, to hear about women that have been at the brink of death and their doctors had to make a decision like, this is not simply abortion. Right. You can act like that and just make it simple for yourself. But the fact of the matter is that it's far more complex. And I think that that's one of those overreaches, just like Russia going into Ukraine. They thought they were going to make a quick work of it. Yeah. But here we are 3 years later, and they're still in for a fight of their lives. But you know who they're holding out for? They're holding out for a win by Donald Trump because they know that he's not interested in doing the right thing. Period. Has no interest whatsoever. All you have to do is look at the $50 million of, remember when he made the criticism that Hillary Clinton was going to be in court all day long, and so we shouldn't vote for her. We shouldn't vote for her because she was going to be tied up in court over those emails. Yeah. What? You've forgotten all the things that he has said that now have got him all wrapped up. Sexual assault is what he lost, and he doesn't respect our court system. I mean, those are problems. Yep. But let's spend some time, Tommy, because in the sort of community dialogue that we had, we started the conversation with what is working well. Yeah. So, Tommy, let's go back and visit that. What are some of the things that you believe are working well? Where's diversity and inclusion making a real impact? What is showing the most progress and why?
So this is a challenging question for me, Eric, because two reasons. One, I'm overly critical about progress, and I'm a champion of continuous improvement. And so from my perspective, it may be my mindset, it may be my personality, that regardless of how well I think things are going, even for myself, organizations, I always think there's room for improvement. And I'm not just saying that to deflate or detract from the work that's being done. I seriously think there's opportunities for improvement. Right. And so with organizations, I know that what's working well, and not to get into details, is where there are organizations that are still doing the work.
Right.
They still have a staff in DEI.
Right.
They still have an office.
Right.
They still have developed a strategy with metrics.
Right.
They have goals and objectives.
Right. They're real believers.
They're still doing that even in the face of tremendous adversity.
Right.
And so I share kudos with some universities who have been.
Oh, and it's tough for them because the professors have to be concerned now about losing their teaching license and all of that over saying things that might make anybody else uncomfortable.
Make anybody else uncomfortable. That professor or educator can lose their job.
Right.
Possibly lose their career.
Right.
And the institutions might lose their certification.
Right. And they're federal dollars.
Federal dollars.
Now we're not included.
Right.
Marginalized people aren't included on the people that might be offended.
Yeah.
If some of us said we're offended that this is not being taught, nobody cares, because you don't have the power to really come at them, and too many we don't have the legislative support.
For those who are still doing the work, kind of facing the wind, the headwind head on, that's what's working well.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm sure you have some more details, but that's overarching kind of philosophical.
Right. So I'll tell you that, number one, success isn't always this big, gigantic boom. It happened. There's no organization that's working in this space that is solidly 100% committed to DEIB, DEIA. If you are succeeding, it looks like this, like a golf game. Golf is a sport that you don't come out every day and you're great already, Tommy.
No.
It's up and down game. But as Tommy and I keep working on it, it's up and down, but your actual trajectory is going this way. But it is this. That is what success looks like. So I would say to you that it is small changes that happen over time. Now let's look at some areas that give us some examples of what it looks like when it does work. I'll start with professional sports. So we've said this before that professional baseball, the NFL, the NBA, we had to fight those leagues, those institutions, those owners to be open to players of color and women. Only fighting them to get in the door. They were talking about meritocracy then, only to make the owners richer. And so it used to be a time, some of you will remember this, when we didn't think that African Americans were smart enough to be the quarterback. And everyone that was a quarterback in their high school, their college, we were going to make them into a running back or a wide receiver because that was better suited for the brute bulk guys, that are just muscle dudes. They're not thinkers. And now today, the athletic, fast, throw a spiral down the field, that is now the new model for the greatest talents at quarterback. And so you see a little more meritocracy. We were fighting them through DEI. We were fighting them for coaches of color. And everybody was saying, well, no, we're colorblind. Right. We don't even see that. Why are you all making us see? But now you've got literally the legend of coaching, Bill Belichick, is going to have to retire because now his style is viewed as an older style. And the young coach of the Houston Texans, young, relatable to the young kids, sharp mind, African-American, he is now, that's becoming more of the standard with organizations that want to win. I want to say one more thing about, and I'm going to come back to success, that if you really want meritocracy, that's what we've been fighting for forever. That's what we're interested in.
Yeah.
When organizations aren't doing DEI, then they are not meritocracy oriented. The old days, let's just say when it was even all white, That wasn't meritocracy. It was favoritism. It was buddyship. And if you weren't in favor with the senior leaders, then you got left out as well. That still occurs today. I have several clients that I believe are succeeding at this work. Louisville Water is one of them. And I want to just give a shout out to the CEO, the senior vice president of HR, and their entire organization for the work that they're doing around this. I mean, they're really committed to making long-term progress in this. When the Supreme Court overturned affirmative action around universities, the CEO came right out and said, that's how we change what we do. But here's what I promise you, I get shook sometimes when you start seeing change happen in front of you. I was in a leadership meeting and the president of the union, white guy who was at the beginning on the outskirts of this, is really come a long way in our relationship. I love this guy. I have a lot of confidence in him. He sat in a leadership meeting and say that we cannot say that there's still not structural sexism here, he said, and he started giving examples. And I remember when affirmative action went down, I had a crazy thought. I shared it with Judy. I said, Judy, I want to post that now's the time for our allies to stand up. In other words, the reason why DEI is being able to be dismantled is because the bias, people are being quiet about bias, but loud about diversity. So if the solutions are saying women's leadership group, LGBT leadership group, minority development, then the only things that are labeled are the things that we're doing trying to level the playing field. The bias, the sexism, the racism, the classism, those things are quietly being implemented on a regular basis. They don't need any real loud support. And so then through law, you're able to wipe the field of all the things that many of those, they represented progress. It was like the only thing that we could do. You had to prove to us that you're making progress. And so you wipe those things out to say that we're going to be colorblind, gender blind. But when we're blind, then we are losing. And so I said it to Judy. I said, I want to make a post that we need sort of people to come forth and be allies and say, here's what's happening behind the curtains. And to hear this guy do that, Tommy, man, I sat back in my chair and said, thank you, God, for softening the heart of man, that he's just willing to tell the truth in a way that might help us to do the right thing by women.
And he will be, in many cases, your greatest champion.
That's right.
Because those who have come through the storm, the transformation, the journey, they have a testimony.
Right.
And that testimony resonates with others who have testimonies.
Right.
It really gives, again, the humanity of the work, that this is a journey.
Right.
A journey. And I'm so excited to hear this, Eric, because I'm a proponent of really changing a mind.
Right.
I really believe that people can change their mind.
Absolutely, man. I do too.
We just have to be exposed to something different than our previous thinking, which was informed by our previous exposure.
Right. That's right.
It's just something new. What does that new idea look like? What does that new future look like? And so that takes some work. Kudos to Louisville Water.
And my language from the very beginning was that we have to make sure that our diversity effort includes white males and fights for them where they are marginalized. So a lot of times the people that are reading the meters, the people that are in the union, experience classism. And so that's not a token thing with me. I don't just throw it in the pot just to say I'm also covering white guys. No, I'm actually looking at it with the same amount of scrutiny and consistency as I'm doing everything else. What I've learned, and I want you to hear us say this loudly, that a race-only strategy is doomed to failure. And I'll give you a simple reason why. When my kids were growing up, little kids, every Christmas, Tommy, they would 1201, they come get me and my wife, drag us down and say, it's Christmas. They drag us downstairs and they rip open all their gifts and they would look at them and then they'd make a pound in front of themselves and they'd be celebrating them. But just as soon as they got done celebrating their gifts, you know what they did? Look around to see what everybody else got. And if it looked like Jillian, she got an easy bake oven this year, she got something else, I mean, it really works. I mean, they would start saying, she's their favorite.
Yep.
And that doesn't go well. And so I promise you that when we grow up, Tommy, we don't get away from that. We're still looking around the room to see who's getting what. And I'll be the first to say, don't come to me with a race-only strategy. And here's the reason why. So Tommy and I gave you a lot of energy. I got just as much energy here. That if all we deal with is racism, when I come into the room, the only role I have, Tommy, is the role of victim. And so I got to pull up all my stories of pain and victimization. And white people in the room, the only role that they can play is villain. And so when we show up in that dynamic, then it actually has no value to me. Because unless I come to the table open and interested in talking about my sexism, my heterosexism, my classism, unless I come to the table ready to talk about those, then I'm not doing anything. So we want to say with you with a strong voice, there's a reason why we were the pioneers in broadening what diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging is all about. We are literally God's men, women, and others in the world that are being used to reconcile people one to another. And honestly, to in many ways try to reconcile people to God. That is the mandate that we're on. I'm going to say one more thing, Tommy, I'm going to shut up. And I would say to you that the work of DEI, DEIB, has no natural, credible opponent, period.
Period. So, Eric, as you say that, and thank you for sharing that, Eric, that landed well with me, I'm certain, with our community. And I would like to invite our community to go back and listen to this again. Eric has shared some phenomenal insights, dropped some jewels that I want us to process, as I'm going to do the same.
Yeah, same here, bro.
Yeah, it's going to process.
Right.
So when we look at the current climate, Eric, the current climate of this work of DE&I, DEIA, DEIB, right? From your perspective, what's the current climate? What's going on?
Well, I would say that the current climate is shell-shocked. There are a lot of people on pause. I would say to you that corporations basically are risk averse. I understand it. They've got customers that are liberals, conservatives. Man, they're trying to stay out of the fight. I get it. We're trying to stay out of the fight. We don't want to be in the fight as partisans because we want to fight for everybody. We want customers all over the place. But I would say to you that there has been enough fear. And I would say to you that it is it's irresponsible, but not unexpected, that politicians are nothing but partisans and looking for angles that they can get to sort of get some constituents. They no longer really believe in the value of the other side. And so diversity talks about the value of the other side. But I think that it really takes courageous organizations with leaders that are truly centered around doing the right thing. And let me put this in context. Gallup did research in 2017 of full-time workers around the globe, where they found that 85% of workers don't like their jobs, 75% don't like their bosses. So if that's what it looks like for the workers in general, how worse does it look for people that are marginalized and diverse? So I would say to you, but the good news is this, in the current condition, Tommy, that we are beginning to clear the board of those who are not interested in really genuinely doing this work. And unfortunately, Tommy and I spent a lot of time with them. And I'm going to say to you, I'm going to announce it here today. I'm joining the fighters against DEI. That if you don't want to do it, hear me. Tommy might not say it, but I'm going to say it. Quit. Get the program. Scrap it. Scrap it. Scrap it. And make sure you tell me and Tommy when we come see you, go to That's what I want you to do. Do not do this if you ain't on board. I free you of any obligation, because we only want people who care about their people. We don't want people to favor any group. We want you to fight for everybody that works in your organization and every customer that you serve. Fight for them with humility, fairness, justice. That's what we're talking about. And if you ain't interested in that, I'm saying to you, say goodbye.
Eric,
Sunset this.
Answer this for me. So now you've given folks the charge, you've given them the permission to dismount.
That's right, dismount.
Yep. Give them the permission, right?
Right.
And so then you have folks who are going to take heed to the charge.
Right.
They're going to leave. Hey, I never wanted to do
That's
it.
right.
I was asked to be a part of it.
And I heard consultants say, get out.
Get out. And you know what? I'm out. I'm
Right.
back. I'm going back into the field. I'm going back into operations.
Right.
I'm going back into HR. I'm just going back to where I came from.
Right.
etc. That's that one.
That's
camp.
right. Right.
You have another camp that's saying, now that they are leaving, raise me up so that I can now take the helm.
Yeah.
Because I've been waiting for 5, 10, 15, 20 years.
For the best talent.
For the best talent.
Yeah.
And so those are two
Love it,
different
Tommy.
areas. So my question to you is, what about the fence straddlers?
Okay.
Those who say, Eric is giving us the charge to leave.
Right.
And I am going to give you the impression that I'm leaving.
Right.
Right. But in reality, I am still working to maybe dismantle this, sabotage it, maybe continue to make kind of small snail movements forward. And over the next 5 to 10 years, once I start to begin to sunset my career into retirement, then I could be able to put a feather in my hat saying, you know what? We gave a good go of it for about 15, 20 years.
Right.
Eric Ellis, he shared with me, and Tommy Lewis shared.
Yeah.
We could dismount.
Right.
I didn't believe it because I was a champion of DEI.
Right.
And then we asked, what's been the progress, right? So my question again is, for those who are giving lip service, who are halfway dismounting, who are straddling the fence, what do we have to share with them?
I've got it, Tommy. I got it. And this is going to come from our LGBTQ plus community. They encouraged businesses in the marketplace to use pronouns in your emails, use pronouns on your social media. And so mine are he, him, his. So I have those on my social media so you can know that I'm open to people's diversity. So that's all I'm going to ask you to do. Just post where you stand. You don't care about DEI and you think it's wrong, post it. Just put it right up there next to your company. We are not interested in DEI. We think that it's bias and discrimination. We're straddlers. We're on the fence. We're not sure if we support DEI. The jury is still out. We are avid supporters of, believers in DEIB, DEIA. That's all I ask. Just post it. Stand next to whatever you believe so that your clients, potential customers, and your potential talent can know without having to come into your organization and discover that behind all those pretty words and all those nice ads and all those smiling faces were people that weren't interested in this work. Because here's the thing, you just wasted your money. You're wasting your money to be recruiting talent that you're not interested in. Because I can tell you this, that this next generation, they're not taking it. They're not taking it, of all colors. They want to work in places that are diverse because that represents an openness to meritocracy and talent and opportunity for all. So that's all we say. And our big political leaders, just put it on your site. And the thing is, the thing that I think we've got to do with politicians, the reason why politicians can say crazy ass, I won't finish it because I'm a good Christian man. But the reason they can do that is because they jimmy rigged their areas. What do we call it? When they change their districts?
Yeah, gerrymander.
Gerrymandered districts.
Yep.
See, when you gerrymander your district, then you've gerrymandered something so that you don't have to be accountable to diverse individuals. Let's dismantle that. And for everybody, I'm not just saying dismantle it for Republicans. Make everybody responsible for the diversity of citizens that live in this country. Because if you had to be accountable to them, you change your little soft tune.
Yep.
That's all we're saying, Tommy.
Yeah.
Is, hey, if you don't believe, just come right
Wow. Just say it.
And I'm going, hey, now watch this. I'm not even going to be mad at you. I'll fight for your freedom to never do this. And I won't make a prediction that you're just going to die because you're not focused on this. I actually think that there's some people, Tommy, that are good folk, that are really from a colorblind kind of philosophy,
Yep.
Who may not need anything, man. They're just good folk trying to do the right thing. So I would never suggest that everybody that's not doing diversity thing and they're not using Tommy and I, that they're automatically going to fail. At the end of the day, I really believe that if you're trying to do the right thing by all people, I don't care what you call it, we're going to stand with you, fight for you.
Yeah, and that's a great point, because when we talk about DEI, right, diversity, equity, inclusion, and then we have DEI and B. What you're talking about is the B, the belonging.
Right.
When you have the sense of belonging wherever your position is.
Right.
So if you posted, Eric, here's my stance.
Right.
You still belong here.
That's right.
You're still included.
Yeah.
Right. If you post that, hey, I'm uncertain which way to go, I don't know, no worries. You still belong.
Yeah.
Right. This is not about excluding you.
No.
It's not about creating this sense that, no, you cannot be your true self. Right. Nor can you have an opinion. That's not what this is.
Diversity has to include your opinion.
Yep.
No matter how conservative you are. That's why we're both grateful to be Christians in the diversity field, because diversity has oftentimes, unfortunately, been too hostile towards people based upon their Christian faith. And so, we believe that everybody has to be welcome.
So, Eric, we spoke about this prior to the show, and I was so interested. I'm taking my notes. I may even steal your notes.
Good. Yeah,
right?
Please do, man. I'd be honored by that, because I'm certainly stealing his stuff.
So if you could refer to the areas where we're talking about these four buckets, right? And I want you to talk about these four buckets.
Right. Thank you, Tommy.
We want to transition from that to around some application, because it made sense to me of our current state and the climate today.
Right.
And then how can we possibly address whatever we're going through today for tomorrow?
So Dr. Liliana Mason, her research then said that we are not policy-wise, we're just not that different. So then what is it? What is it is that she said that there are these four areas that sort of make up who we are and influence our political decisions. It's our party, our race, our ideology, and our religious beliefs. And what she said was that each of those is a part of our identity. And so when an area is doing well, we feel good. When an area is not doing well, or we failed in it, then we feel bad. What she said that parties have tried to do is to tie those together. So your race, sort of Republican strategy in many ways was sort of white rural Christians. And so they try to get my race and my party, my ideology and my religion tied together. If you tie those together, then you make me more combustible. My anger goes up, my enthusiasm goes up. So we know that people are tribal. There was a research project that asked people for overestimators, underestimators. I don't think I talked about this on the show. That people were looking at beads and said, okay, give a number. How many do you think is in this jar? Okay, you overestimated, so you're an overestimator. You, okay, underestimator. Then it just went on. And then at the end, they asked people, okay, we're going to give you a choice. Would you be willing to have the overestimators and the underestimators get $5 each? Or do you want the overestimators to get $4, your group to get $4, and the underestimator to get $3? People went for the second. Huh? So literally, people were making decisions that were against themselves. They were willing to lose $1 if they could be better than you. And so that's what happens in our politics then, that if all of these are tied together, then if your party tanks, then you feel depressed because you have nothing to redeem you. But if you have divergency within your 4 areas, in other words, if you are a Republican and Black, if you are a Democrat, but you're a Christian, then those are divergent. And so then it makes it easier for you to be a more balanced thinker and to not be so emotional when one area falls down. Because if that area fails, you have 3 other areas to build your esteem back up. So we've got to understand how we are being manipulated so that we might oppose others. There's a book called Dying of Whiteness that says that in many ways, white people are being deceived. They did some research in Wisconsin and asked a lot of Wisconsin Republican voters, why are you so opposed to Democrats? Well, they are trying to get all of our hard-earned tax dollars and give it to those people like in the inner city. But when you looked at the facts, that the tax dollars of people in the urban communities in Wisconsin were funding and underwriting the people in rural communities at a much higher level. So literally their tax dollars are actually, and there are a lot of people, Tommy, that because Obama came up with Obamacare, they sort of opposed it. Sometimes when their family healthcare needs were deplorable and they were struggling, they voted against something that was in their own self-interest. The research says that the impact of people that are willing to make decisions that are hurtful to themselves, just as long as somebody else doesn't get anything, it's almost like the impact is almost like secondhand smoke. It literally has a noticeable, a measurable impact on your life expectancy.
So I'm curious, we talk about the African-American community over the last 60, 75, 100 years plus, and these generational situations, generational events, etc. And how when in the 40s, 50s, and 60s, we may have had our African-American community and family construct was a little bit different. There was some change, and now we are dealing with the after effects. I'm curious with even our white brothers and sisters who from Wisconsin, et cetera, who they themselves are going through this transformation. How will this show up in 20 years? Where from an identity politics perspective, we have moved toward a direction that in the moment it was against us, right? Potentially.
Right.
And now 20 years later, be it healthcare, be it education, being that liberal, I shouldn't say liberal, but that freedom.
Right.
Right. When those freedoms are different in 20 years than they are now, did we, how will that show up? I'm just thinking.
That's a good question, Tommy. So here's the answer. I got the answer to this one. And it's not housed simply in all the knowledge base of people like Tommy and myself. Actually, the solutions are very simple. We got to get to know each other. I'm sorry to say that to you.
Yeah.
But here's what the research shows us. That as people, I'll start with a study, but then I'll get away from that. There's some work that was done by the University of Wisconsin and others on what are the 3 steps to bringing down unconscious bias. Step number 1 is you had to increase people's awareness, their knowledge of the inequity and how it's impacting other people. So first of all, we got to know what people are going through, whether they're white and it's stress, economic challenges. So we got to understand the inequity that people are facing. That's step number 1. Step number 2, You have to drive up your empathy and concern for those individuals. You have to not just know that they're being unfairly done, you got to care about it. And then number three, you have to have skills and tools. That's what Tommy and I master in, helping you to navigate these things. And but the number one tool is building deeper relationships with people unlike yourself. Stop moving to the communities with the same people. Stop going to churches with the same people. Stop going to schools and social areas with the same people. Make an investment in somebody that doesn't look like you, that's different than you. It will enrich your life, number one. But I tell you this, Tommy, as I get to know you and you and I get to trust in each other, there's nothing we won't do for each other. He's got to be able to call me when he needs $1 and me call him if I need $1. We won't do that if we don't know each other. And so I'll tell you that the answer is not in the hands of stupid, ridiculous politicians. It's in your hand. And you have got to, we don't need a day of dialogue where we just come together and sit in a room, try to talk about racism. That makes us angry sometimes. Go fishing with people. Go out, bowling with families, picnic together, dance together, get drunk together. I don't drink, but whatever you need to do to build you a relationship with somebody that's different than you, our nation's future depends on it. It will not be. These legislators, I promise you, they're not strong. They are weak. They'll follow your lead. What we do is what they will ultimately do.
You've heard the charge. On this
I got time. Watch it now.
This is what this is about.
Right. It ain't on us.
And Eric, listen.
It's on us.
I'm going to say this as we begin to close out. It's been a fast hour once again.
Blew by.
Right?
Blew by.
So here's, again, what I recommend. That thank you for coming together every Saturday for this diversity conversation.
Absolutely.
That's great. What I charge and challenge each and every one of us to do is exactly what Eric just said, to increase our proximity with one another. Because we're joined right now virtually. Eric and I are in the same space. Right? And you all can be across the world. But your community is where you are.
That's right.
It's not always just where you live.
That's right.
Or just where you go to work.
That's right. You can build a new thing.
Yes, it's where you are. So if you are traveling to a new city, a new state, a new country, in that moment, that's your community. And that's how you have to treat it as such. And to do that, you have to learn about your community. Your community has to learn about you. And you learn that through engaging with people, dialogue with people, observing objectively. Yep. Don't observe through the lens of that is wrong and I'm right. Right. So we learn and observe objectively.
And become curious. That's right.
Yep. Become curious. And that curiosity may invite a question.
That's right.
And in that question, I promise you, those who have the answer will say, I got the answer. You've heard Eric say that. I've said it. But sometimes those who don't have the answer will see that you're in doubt, and that's their opportunity.
Yeah, pounce.
The pounce. Let me give you a half truth, or maybe even
right.
If you receive one piece of information, don't take it as law.
That's right.
You have to get more pieces. Right. And that's important. So just because someone says, well, when you go to Europe, all Europeans are like this, that's their truth. I will ask you to ask other people, because that one person cannot speak on everyone. You have to have proximity. Start getting closer to the truth. Start getting closer to you and continue to be comfortable being uncomfortable. And those are these conversations. And so we're going to continue this once again. Our community jumped in. We shared a few. Thank you for coming in. But I'm going to turn it to you this time, Eric, to close this out.
Well, I want to say this to you, that there are some people in this country that want me to turn against my Palestinian friends because of what Hamas did. There are other people that want me to turn against my Jewish friends because what's happening in Gaza right now. I refuse to allow the pain of these moments to cause me to take a broad brush and paint a whole group of people. I refuse that. I will not choose sides. I will stand for and fight for the innocent. And what I'm saying to you is that people, the power is in our hands. It's in our mouth. It's in our heart. Don't give up on each other. Don't allow you to have anybody make you vilify. I'm not even vilifying the Republican Party.
Right.
I think they're hostage right now. And so we thank you, Tommy and I thank you so much for joining us today and joining us every Saturday morning at 9:30. We want to hear from you. We're working on right now getting some ways to get call in so we can have you participate in us in different ways, because we believe that the insights that God has given us in our heads, but the love that he's given us in our hearts is enough, if it's combined with yours, to make this world a better place. Thank you for joining us.
Take care.
Take care of each other. Bye now.